I keep hitting record and then stopping, getting a couple minutes into it, realizing I don't like what I'm doing, and then starting over again. So fuck it, here we go. I made it black and white. Production value. All right, so I've spoken about Kevin Smith many a times when it comes to other shows I've done or podcasts and stuff like that, and it's easy now to look at it and be like, oh, you have the contrarians who are like, he likes everything, or he's always crying about something, and and he's the podcast guy and all this kind of stuff. But I don't have a problem with crying. I cry all the time, and for the most part, I like most things, not everything. I like most things, but I wanted to kind of take you back on a sentimental journey to how I discovered this guy and what his work meant to me as I was growing up. And it's wild to think about just how long ago 1993 was. I fell in love with film at a super young age. I was lucky enough to be part of the VHS era of kids. We could go to the video store on a Friday night. Our local mom and pop video store in Marlton, New Jersey, where I grew up, was called B&C Video. And I think I learned more at B&C Video about film than I learned going to film school. But we had everything we could want, that we thought, at our fucking fingertips. And that usually meant, renting Ghostbusters and Return of the Jedi over and over and over again. But I grew up in that era where, you weren't reliant on it being in the theater. You weren't relying on seeing it come on to local television or whatever. We had the video store, and then local in Philadelphia, I had Prism, which was sort of like the regional version of HBO. And I saw so much at such a young age, and it started to really have an impression on me. Like I talked about film differently than like, oh, that was cool, or we liked that, or whatever. I got really interested in who made these things, and it's, again, going back to before the internet. Whenever my mom or a babysitter or like my aunts and uncles or grandparents would take us to the library a lot, because I loved going to the library and just like checking stuff out. I used to go through the loose leaf system and stuff and try to find books about film, and that's where I discovered Psychotronic and like big I don't know, just books about film. And Fangoria magazine and Starlog magazine and stuff, and just trying to consume everything that I could, and West Coast Video. And my parents got divorced. There was a West Coast Video near my dad's girlfriend's house, and they used to have these manuals in them that had like, this is everything we carry, and it had a little description on stuff. And I just remember like poring over that and just like circling the ones I've seen, and then like putting a star next to the ones that I wanted to see, and like reading about it, and then going to the library and then looking up that movie and stuff like that, and in different film books. So I was a big fucking nerd, dude. And my cat's trying to knock the camera stand over. Can you stop? Thanks. You're a mensch. So yeah, growing up, I consumed everything, and I wanted to make movies, but I didn't know what that meant. I'm 42 years old. I still don't know what that means. And I used to write little scripts, and I'd write them in like play format, because when we would do plays in school, I would just copy that format, because even back then I was a plagiarist. And then it wasn't until '89 Batman when the media rollout of that movie was just like, now who Danny Elfman and Anton Furst and all these different people who were involved in the behind the scenes stuff, and you learned who the producers, Goobers and Peters and Goober and you know, and all that kind of stuff. And I had known Tim Burton's style, and just like that was the summer that like I really hit that stride of like, oh, now we're in an age where you can learn more about these people and what else they've done, and then you start to like in your head build a dossier of like, oh, well, that person actually did music on this movie, or this person built the effects for this, and you know, and then you start to hear names like Stan Winston and Rob Bottin and you know, and you know, and Rick Baker and Tom Savini and all this different types of stuff, and set designers, and not even just it wasn't even just the superficial stuff anymore, the directors, the actors, you know, and that was the summer that kind of like I was in it at that point. I you know, this would be my life forever, is you know, chasing the dragon when it came to my love for cinema. But again, you know, you're running around the backyard with your fucking friends, and you're shooting your little horror movies and stuff like that, or your action movies with your friends, and you know, and in your head while you're shooting it with the, you know, I remember my parents at first had the big fucking like shoulder mounted where you could hear the air cooled motor of the you know, the VHS recorder, and I remember like in my head what I was filming was Steven Spielberg, you know, and then you would pop it in the fucking top loader VCR, and it just looked like a bunch of little dumbass kids in South Jersey fucking running around in the backyard. And then, you know, I taught myself through, you know, film books and stuff like that how to do, you know, tape to tape, you know, editing and stuff like that. And it was, you know, but again, it was like Hollywood movies may as well have been shot on Endor. You know, there was nothing around here that I knew of. Like, I knew people from New Jersey who were famous. You know, I knew Bon Jovi and Bruce Springsteen and Danny DeVito and Jack Nicholson and shit like that. Like, I knew that they were from New Jersey. And then, and I remember this as clear as day. Like, I at a Little League game, and my mom brought me the paper, the Philadelphia Inquirer, and she's like, look, this guy in New Jersey made a movie. And I was like, no, that's illegal. You can't do that. Like, you know, and I read about this movie Clerks that was shot at this convenience store, which was like an hour away from where we lived. And I became obsessed. Like, literally, I was like, holy fuck, like this is possible. Like, you know, it's an hour away, you know, and like, you know, again, in an age before the internet, I'm looking up on a map where Leonardo and Red Bank and all of these types of places are, and I'm like, oh my god, like this is, I know kind of where this is. I know we've been up near there before. My mom's work used to have like company like summer picnics things, and it was not far from there at this camp. And I was like, holy fuck, like that. And the convenience store's there. It's not a set, you know? And I remember, so the movie was playing in the local theater. It was the Ritz in Voorhees at the time. And I don't think my parents did very much research on what the movie was about. It's like, oh, it's a movie set at a convenience store, and it's a comedy. And you know, and my mom going, well, it's black and white. Like, are you sure it's a new movie? I was like, motherfucker, you gave me the newspaper. Like, yeah, it's a new movie. Yeah, so they took me, I was in 5th grade, to go see the movie, and I don't think they expected it to be as vulgar as it was, and so much of it went over my head. You know, there was a lot of shit that I didn't get at that point, but there was a lot of shit that I did get, but because I was sitting next to my mom, I had to pretend like I didn't get it. But it changed everything for me. It was the next step of that evolution. It was like, okay, I saw, you know, A New Hope when I was really young, and I said, holy shit, I want to pretend, you know, I want to put on shows and stuff like that. And then I see Batman, and it goes, well, this is how the behind the scenes of this works. And then I see Clerks, and Clerks was the hat trick. Clerks was the third evolution that made me go like, oh my god, like, yeah, like this is possible, you know? And then from there, obviously, you just start to you know, read more about Kevin Smith. There was all kinds of articles about him. And then, you know, he's featured in Wizard magazine. which used to be a big comic book thing. It was all about pop culture and comics and stuff, and I was a huge comic book collector back then. Yeah, so I started learning more and more about this dude, and how how much the movie cost to make, and he made it with his friends and all this kind of stuff, and now it's like this little thing that he made with his friends at a convenience store in my home state. You can now go to your local movie theater and see, and it made me it made me fall in love with this dude too. Like, he seemed like, I think I saw a quote that was like, if he didn't exist, Hollywood would create him. It was he seemed like a guy that I knew from New Jersey at that point. I would get my parents to take me, or like I said, big parents, aunts, uncles, whatever, to take me to comic book stores, to go grab stuff, and he reminded me of dudes I saw at the comic book store, and just New Jersey colloquialisms and all that kind of stuff. And you have Jay Muse, and you have, and then I learn about Walt Flanagan, and I learn about Brian Johnson, so yeah, that little world became huge for me. And then I just remember finding out about Mallrats when it was coming out, and being like, holy shit, the dude from Voyage of the Mimi is in this movie. Because I remember Ben Affleck, Affleck, like I fucking know him, It's like when I was a kid and people, like, all the dude bro guys that I went to middle school and high school with were all big Dave Matthews Band fans, and they all say, oh, going to the Dave concert. And I was like, when were you on first name basis with my man? But, I was never tripping Billy, so I don't know. But yeah, so I just remember going for that one, and that one, we went from this kind of Richard Linklater-esque slacker kind of vibe in Clerks, where a lot of people would say that Slacker obviously was the inspiration for it, but I saw a lot of John Waters in it, and I saw even Godard. There's some of the Godard stuff that I noticed in it as well, where it's like he took these very, not quirky people, but ordinary quirky. Like, everyone in his movies, it was like, oh, I recognize someone like that. But then there's something extraordinary about them and this world that you put them in and these scenarios and stuff like that. And I see a lot of that also with like I said, with Godard's work. You would take these very kind of static shots, and then the frame would become something else through the performances and through the twisting of the normality in it. And then with Mallrats, they said it was something more akin to a Smart Porky's. They were trying to make like a teen-centric titty comedy, basically. I remember being so fucking excited to go see that one in the theater, and it wasn't playing anywhere near us, so we had to have this kid I was really good friends with in middle school, Cameron. His mom drove us like a distance to go see it, and she didn't get it. I think that I don't know. I think that, like, I thought it was gonna. And again, I'm in. This is 1995. I'm in like 6th grade, and I came out of it like, it's funny. I liked it, but it just wasn't as raw. Like, I'm a cinephile at that point or something like that. So I remember leaving it sort of disappointed, but also thinking it was really funny. And then I get the laser disc when it came out, and it was just full of all the deleted fucking scenes. There's like a whole huge expensive opening that got cut out of the movie that changed the entire narrative of the film. So if you ever get a chance to check out the Blu-ray or the DVD or whatever, check out the deleted scenes. There's a whole a whole mix-up that they thought that Jeremy London's character was trying to assassinate the governor of New Jersey. There's a really funny line in there where Jason Lee's like, who are you trying to impress, Jodie Foster? But it changes the entire, like, they had to keep going back and redoing things to change kind of all those pieces in there, because there's weird stuff like when Michael Rooker's character sees Jason Lee, and he's just like, oh, my neighbor, because there was a scene that got cut out where he's out there with the news van and stuff like that. So I remember, again, now it's he got brought on. Kevin Smith got brought on to write the Superman script. Didn't get made, but I remember they used to have these card shows in the South Jersey malls, and some of the vendors wouldn't have baseball cards and stuff like that. They would have movie stuff, and one of them had. And I used to see the same guy. He would always have screenplays, and he had the Superman Live screenplay, which I'm sure I still have somewhere. And like all the rejected like Freddy versus Jason scripts and Watchmen rejected scripts and stuff like that. So through buying those, I taught myself how to write screenplay format, and it was through the Kevin Smith Superman script. And then it was sometime after that when like the View Askew stuff came online. I don't know why I did. It is what it's not like. Whatever. I'm on a lot of medication still from all the medical stuff recently, so ignore me. No, don't ignore me. Please engage. I need this channel to pick up. So yeah, but no, I taught myself how to write screenplays through that as well, and then you get to Chasing Amy's the only one I didn't get a chance to see in theaters. Again, when it came out, I didn't have a chance. I had no way of getting into Philadelphia to go and see it, so I got it as soon as it came on video, and that movie's huge for me. It went back to Clerks in a more scaled down, more raw kind of vibe, and the writing was so fucking sharp. It still is, and and I'm getting into that point now where, getting older and want to be, I really want to make art. I want to make film. I want to be a writer and all this kind of stuff. And you get these people writing these like super like stylized but raw conversations, and that's really when I fell in love with just writing pages and pages and pages of fucking dialogue and conversations with people. And it's in that I kind of started like listening to how people around me talk more, and just picking up on cadences and rhythms and how people have conversations and stuff like that, and try to always include little things in anything that I write. And granted, nothing I write is any fucking good, and Kevin Smith's an award-winning filmmaker, but it was just all these little things, and you could see why so many other young filmmakers, especially in New Jersey, like flocked to the guy, and he became like a folk hero, because he was the closest thing we had to someone who he was obtainable. You could go to the video store and the convenience store. You could go to their comic book store. All these young guys who I grew up with were all trying to write like Kevin Smith, and dick and fart jokes and drugs and all that kind of shit. So he was a huge inspiration for me and for a lot of my friends. I also had a lot of friends who were like, people don't talk that way, and I was like, people don't talk like how George Lucas writes dialogue, but you still fucking love Star Wars, and then you could see he inspired a lot of other young filmmakers. You can see like the Judd Apatow stuff descended from that, and you could see that like I don't know, whatever. It's just, I don't want to ramble and get off into anything, and then I'm not going to get to where I'm trying to get in this. But yeah, Chasing Amy was the one that just like, it really changed the game for me, and really changed like, wanting to write more serious things and see more serious things. And it got me more into the indie film scene as well, where now I'm constantly checking TLA Video in Philly, which was a more like indie video store, and then trying to get people to drive me into Philly or into New York to go see these indie movies that I read about in Variety or different film magazines and stuff like that, back when they used to have magazines still. And then came Dogma, and Dogma was the one that I was working at a movie theater, and we got a bomb threat on opening night, and I'll never forget that as long as I live, because I didn't get a chance to see the movie yet. It was I was gonna get picked up after work, but I told my mom that I worked till 11, but I really worked till 8, so that I could see the 8 o'clock show and then get picked up after that. And somebody called in a fucking bomb threat because the movie, they said it was anti-Christian, anti-Catholic. So I had to wait to see that one. a couple weeks, but I just remember it was only 2 times we ever had that. It was that, and it was Passion of the Christ. We had a bomb thread as well before the Christians. I'll do it this time. The Christians, before they'd ever seen the movie, they somehow thought that it was blasphemous, but then they saw it and then they were like, "Oh shit, yeah, okay, this is like super Jesus-y stuff. We're fine with it now." But it was like, you already fucking called it a bomb threat. You don't no takey backies, you know. But yeah, so and Dogma is one where it's it's got all the shit. There's a it's got a shit monster in it and all the Jay and Silent Bob isms and all this kind of stuff. But it's also like an extremely creative, fantasy action comedy. That is steeped in religious dogma, basically. And then you have something like Preacher come out, that's Garth Ennis after that, and you're like, you have to see how that something like that is clearly. There's little twinges of Dogma in there, and you could see. I think even Kevin Smith thanked Alan Moore in the credits because you could see a lot of Moore's work in it as well. And it has one scene in it that never fails to make me cry every fucking time I see it. I'm not going to talk about it now so I don't get emotional again, because literally every time I think about the scene or talk about the scene, I get emotional from it. And that's a tribute to the writing and the acting in the scene as well. And it's something that you wouldn't think of in some silly, religious comedy fantasy film. I just that movie is special and unique and one that I cite quite a bit when it comes to storytelling that starts in a box and then how it expands and how it uses the religious mythology around it to kind of shape something new, where we always have one foot in what people know, and then inside of that we can play more and push buttons and I don't know, that one's really 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 fucking good. And I feel like the follow-up to that for him would have been Red State, which came down the line more, but where it comes to someone who grew up Catholic, someone who grew up obviously loving the idea of faith, and watching how it gets twisted, or watching how it gets how it's blown up into a comic book almost. So you could see little traces throughout all of his movies, and it's not just the characters were related to characters and events that are related, like doing laps in the pool and having an aneurysm, and girl who had sex with a dead guy in the convenience store bathroom, and all that kind of stuff. There's just a lot of little threads in his writing and in his work that that rings through, and I feel like even like movies that I'm not a huge fan of, Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back, I enjoyed Chasing Dogma, which was the comic book, basically was based on, and not a huge fan of Yoga Hosers or the reboot, but I loved Affleck's scene in the reboot. Again, using just one name, like what the fuck. But no, I don't know. I just wanted to kind of talk about what people think of Kevin Smith now compared to how I discovered him and how I followed his career, and what a huge influence he has been on me as a young guy who's now an old guy, and watching his career grow and watching him get older and get married and have kids. And I listened to all the fucking podcasts and stuff like that, and I loved listening to how everything came together and the behind the scenes stuff, like how they didn't want Jay Muse to stay in Mallrats. They were going to get rid of him and hire Breckin Meyer or Seth Green, and even Jay Muse's drug, getting almost dying, and to where he is now, and then getting to go and shoot 3 episodes of Comic Book Men, and none of them ever aired, but still I got to go hang out with Walt Flanagan and Brian Johnson at one point, and then I got to work on Jersey Girl. They filmed at the Berlin Diner when I was the manager there, and I got to meet Ben Affleck, and I got to meet Kevin Smith. It's the only time I ever got to meet Kevin Smith, and it was super cool and exciting. And when they were filming Red State, I was supposed to be in a scene that was going to be shot in LA at an airport, and the scene got canceled, so I wasn't in that scene. So I think they rewrote it as the protest outside the church, but. Yeah, I don't know. I've been going back and rewatching a lot of his movies, and I did a review already on this channel for Tusk, which I love. But I don't know. I've just been going back and rewatching his stuff and just falling in love with it all over again. In fact, I watched Vulgar and all this stuff that they kind of did with View Askew. Around the same time of like Dogma and stuff, when he was kind of putting out smaller films of his own. Drawing Flies was in there, and A Better Place and stuff like that. And my cat's running back and forth. But yeah, so it's just kind of like it's rewatching them. They give me this warm feeling inside because I'm brought back to where I was when I discovered the dude's work. I'm brought back to where I was when I was trying to emulate that style. Fuck, my yearbook quote my senior year in high school is mostly Kevin Smith quotes. I used to have in high school the posters in my bedroom framed and stuff like that, or just tacked up on the wall actually. He was such a huge part of my life, and still is. I still I still look forward to his reviews of things, and when he's got new movies coming out. He bought a fucking movie theater, and that's another thing that, like, going back to how I started this review, is like, we grew up in an age of the video store, and Kevin Smith's obviously known for his time at a video store. Mallrats especially is such a fucking, from its cast to the magic eye thing to everything, it's such a snapshot of that era of the 1990s, and it makes me sort of miss that time, and I think back about, like, growing up, going to the movies, and again going to see Clerks in a movie theater, and, like, seeing it on the big screen was so much different than then I could take it home and watch it on video and stuff like that. But I was just like, I'm glad I got to have that big experience for pretty much all of his films, and then obviously to have all the VHS tapes and the DVDs and stuff like that. But now he owns a movie theater, and he's keeping this movie theater alive that he saw films in when he was a kid, that made him fall in love with film as well. And as more and more of these places close down, video stores are gone. I worked in a video store for a while, and I worked in a movie theater for an even longer while. But, like, I just, it's this trip down memory lane. It's this trip to go, like, we've gotten so far away from the core of how this shit started when it came to my love, especially for all this stuff. And, and yeah, there has been movies of Kevin Smith's that I haven't liked, and there have been takes that I haven't liked and stuff like that, but there's been plenty of movies that I've worked on that people don't like, and takes I have that people don't like. I'd say more people dislike me than him. But yeah, I don't know, I've been feeling very sentimental of late, and I just started going back down the road of things that made sense back when the world made sense. And when I landed on, I'm gonna pop in Clerks. I haven't seen Clerks in a couple years, and next thing you know, I popped in Mallrats, and next thing I know, I popped in Chasing Amy, then Dogma, then Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back, and I just and Jersey Girl, and my ex Christy, who passed away last June, I got her into Kevin Smith movies when we went and saw Jersey Girl on a date. And then she had done a monologue that Kevin Smith had written in an acting class and stuff like that. So that was something that we shared together. And I remember she gave me, like, the little in-action figures and stuff like that. And then she got me one year for my birthday an autographed copy of the Chasing Amy script, which I still have. So again, I sit there and I watch something like watching watching Jersey Girl, and I was like, oh, I was there when that shot and stuff. But also just that time that we had together, and she's gone now, and it took me back down this place of like, I I miss those days. I miss that feeling. But I'm glad that it was there, and I'm glad that along the way, that dude's work inspired me to want to create art, much like all the different writers and artists and stuff that inspired him along the way. So it's cool, and I hope that future generations find it and just and also hook onto it and can also be inspired by it. And I don't know. I've been feeling sentimental, and I'm so glad that I discovered these movies when I did. I'm so fucking glad that my mom gave me that newspaper, and made me go like, oh shit, like this is possible. This is something that can be done. And while granted, I've never done anything of merit, no one's ever gonna call Swamp Zombies 2, even Yoga Hosers quality. But it really lit a fire under me to want to create and to want to tell stories and continue to also ingest new art to draw from, and along the way, as you write or create something, you go, okay, well, it's kind of like this, much like if you watch a lot of Kevin Smith stuff, a lot of the dialogue and the jokes are very much either comic book based or literary based, or old movies and stuff like that. You could just see where people kind of like, they have these big meals of content, and how then that melded together shapes then what you create. And I've been continuing to just gorge myself on books and comic books and magazines and movies and TV shows and music and anything that I can to try to better shape myself and my own tastes, and along the way, Kevin Smith movies and screenplays, and just him as a personality, and being a dude out there who wasn't afraid to be into fucking comics, and people thought that was cool, So, as one Garden Stater to another, you'll never see this, but I can't thank the whole View Askew world enough for creating these things that I can enjoy 30 years later, but just still are this warm center of my own evolution as a wannabe. This time it works though. I'll do this as a wannabe creative. Yeah, I'll defend the dude forever, because I genuinely love what he's given the world. And you can poo-poo it all you want, but it means a lot to me. And yeah, I guess Snoochy Boochies. I don't know how to end it.